we just said that basically the prosecution process had been totally corrupted, and that these women weren't in charge of what was happening, as no other rape victims are. It's the state who's responsible, and they have to take responsibility for it. And frankly, I think some of them should now be exposed and prosecuted.
So yeah, like I told you when I contacted you first, the fact that I wanted to interview you guys instead of another organization is that that was because I remember back in 2012 you had published an opinion piece on the Guardian where you were showing support to Julian Assange. And for people who are not familiar with this case or don't remember, Julian Assange is the founder of WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks was founded in 2006, and in 2010 they started publishing documents and even videos that were showing war crimes committed by the US. And yeah, so since 2010, there was this cabal against WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. Yeah, it was just a few months after he started, or WikiLeaks started publishing these documents, that there was this rape accusation against him. A rape accusation in Sweden. And yeah, so there was, actually, there wasn't really a case. It was just like preliminary, not even preliminary investigation. It was just like a complaint by two women, but one of the women didn't even sign her statement. It was because she disagreed, and she said the police wrote things that weren't exactly what she said. So yeah, so starting from this, there was an international arrest warrant against Julian Assange, and it was issued while he was in the UK, because he went from Sweden to the UK with the authorization of the Swedish prosecutor who was in charge of the case. So they kind of trapped him. And yeah, in the UK, he had no choice but to surrender to the UK police. And then they put him 10 days in isolation and so on. So that's where his detention began up until this day. He was detained in several forms, like house arrest and now high security prison. So yeah, I thought it was really amazing and really inspiring that you guys, I mean, you're an organization against rape against women, and you still voiced your support for Julian Assange. So now, of course, with hindsight, we know that Julian Assange was right and this was all a fabrication. But back then, it wasn't that easy, and I found that really inspiring that you took that position. So can you explain a little bit why you took that position of supporting Julian Assange, and what were you saying really in your opinion piece?
Yeah, so we started speaking out about this witch hunt against Julian Assange in 2010, when the Swedish allegation first appeared. It wasn't an allegation of rape that the two women had made. They went to the police because they were worried about having caught HIV, because they had both slept with him within a couple of weeks while he was on tour in Sweden. And at that time, it was very hard to know what exactly had gone on, because the case was immediately very distorted by the Swedish authorities, who immediately leaked the story to the daily paper Expressen within the same day as the women going to the police together, which is against their procedure. They should not be doing that. And they released details about him immediately called it a rape allegation when it wasn't a rape allegation at that point, and started spreading propaganda about this fugitive from justice who was just running away from rape prosecution. And we had already been following WikiLeaks because we were also very anti-war and were very involved in, you know, demonstrating with over 1 million other people against the invasion of Iraq by the US and UK forces. And we had a lot of meetings with Iraqi women, as well as we have had with Palestinian women, who were telling us about the torture and rape that was going on in their countries under these occupations by the West, the Western regimes. And we were horrified when we saw the collateral damage video about the just bombing of people, of civilians, including children, you know, and no, nothing was done about it. I mean, that's a war crime. Nothing was ever done. And at the same time, you had this narrative of, you know, that he was an accused rapist, which was all over the international media virtually every day for months on end. And right at the beginning, because we didn't have all the details, we were very careful about how we approached this and said, if it is a sexual offence that the Swedish government is pursuing him for, we want an assurance that he won't be extradited to the US, where they obviously want to go after him for this leak. And two, we also want to see a proper procedural investigation done, a timely investigation, so that if something terrible has happened to these women, it be dealt with professionally and properly through the normal procedures. And we questioned the unusual zeal by which the authorities went after Julian Assange, because we've never seen that with any other person accused of rape. And so, you know, then it just turned into this kind of 12, 13-year witch hunt against him, which actually, you know, we kept saying, why aren't they just investigating it? And why aren't they moving to a court case if they think they have the evidence, you know, and doing all the things you would do? And instead of that, what happened is he got labeled a rapist, even though he was never even charged, by lots of media who were quite willing to trash him and also trash the women, frankly, because their names became known and released on the internet. And they also got targeted by a lot of basically men who didn't care about rape and were ready to slag off women at the first opportunity and, you know, make wild allegations about how so many women lie and it's really easy for men to, you know, be set up with a honey trap and all the rest of it. So it was a really nasty, divisive, international kind of campaign that we were trying to speak against in as much of a sober way as we could, and just draw out what we thought the principles were, where we, you know, we just said that basically the prosecution process had been totally corrupted, and that these women weren't in charge of what was happening, as no other rape victims are. It's the state who's responsible, and they have to take responsibility for it. And frankly, I think some of them should now be exposed and prosecuted, because now we know a lot more about what went on. You know, we really didn't take kindly to our issue of injustice, which eats us up every day, and which we, you know, spend our lives trying to help women get through the mire of lack of prosecution and, you know, lack of protection and lack of resources that we're presented with, and lack of asylum for those who are coming from overseas who've been raped. And you've got these people kind of whittering on about, you know, this one Swedish case, as if that's the kind of panacea test case for the whole international rape movement. And we didn't take kindly to that, because we feel that people are being manipulated. You know, a lot of people feel very aggrieved, rightly so, for the injustice that women and girls and boys face. And yet somehow they were implying that if only Assange could be prosecuted, then everything would be fine. we really, you know, we weren't having that. We felt that we were just saying not in our name. And I know of at least one open letter that was written by over 100 rape survivors saying, "Not in our name," which I don't think got the publicity it should have. And we've continued to speak out, wherever media wanted interviews. We've done lots of media interviews.
I thought really your position was courageous a little bit, certainly, and because Julian Assange was truly demonized in the mainstream media and the public arena. But it also showed that you guys weren't about posturing, that you were really you cared about women's rights, and you didn't like the idea of women's rights being used to go after a journalist, basically, right? Exposing war crimes. And I remember 3 or 4 years ago, your instinct, well, it was not an instinct, it was observation, it was a deduction from observation, but the fact that you found it strange that the state, the UK state was especially motivated to go to prosecute this case about allegedly rape, but not the thousands of cases that you were working on. That was very strange. 3 or 4 years ago, there was a freedom of information action by Italian journalist Stefania Maurizi, and it showed that the Crown Prosecution Services were pressuring their Swedish counterparts into not abandoning this Assange case when the Swedish counterparts were they wanted to drop the case. CPS pressured them into not dropping the case, into keeping it alive. Like you said, why don't they move on with an actual prosecution and an actual trial? But we had the answer already in the leaks of this shadow CIA. It's called Stratfor, in which the director was saying he had his contacts with the FBI and CIA and so on. And he was telling his staff, "Oh, this case is about dragging this guy from jurisdiction to jurisdiction during 25 years. This will be his punishment. It's not a trial. It's just to punishment by process, basically, to make his life miserable by dragging him from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and always detained, always unable to work, and so on." So I thought that was really inspiring. That's why I came to you for this interview on rape against women. I guess time vindicated your position.
Yes, you were saying that it was strange, and it was an instinct that we had, that they were going after him for what he'd done. But it's not the first time we've seen rape misused by the state. It's often used as a political football, and it's often a kind of knee-jerk set of policies that governments bring in to justify their other agendas. And one really good example of that is how rape was used in the States to really just justify lynching and other kinds of death penalties against Black men who, like there was a terrible case of a boy called Emmett Till, who was a teenager who was alleged to have whistled at somebody, a woman in a shop, a white woman. And he was from the North, and he was visiting the South and didn't know the danger of, being in that kind of very racist environment. And, they lynched him, they killed him. And nobody was prosecuted for that. And he didn't even do anything. And even in recent decades, you've had, I think there was an author called Susan Brown Miller who was held up as a feminist icon, who actually kind of in an offhand way in her book had written, he did whistle at her, as if there was some justification for how he was treated. It was really awful. And some women objected to that, and she took it out of her later editions. But you know, there's a level of just allowing the state to persecute people. You know, it's just awful. And that's what we objected to. And it was an instinct, you know, because he had just done these leaks, and the state was definitely out to kill him. And just so that listeners are aware, in case anyone doesn't know, he's been pursued for these non-charges and kept in confinement in one place or another, in the embassy, and then in Belmarsh, which is a high security prison in London, on very flimsy evidence, you know, of jumping bail and various things. And there's no prospect of him getting out. But they're also saying they're not releasing him ever, even though if he's too ill, why is he even in jail? Surely he should be looked after in the community. But yeah, it's a really nasty case of, you know, misusing our struggle to witch hunt somebody so that the public doesn't care. I mean, that is the effect, and we're still fighting it now. You know, only a couple of weeks ago, somebody challenged a colleague of mine about, why are you supporting this man, etc. And you know, the media have a lot of responsibility for it, and I'm glad they're changing now. But that it was a lesson in how the state manipulates allegations that are made.
Yeah, well, the media are changing now, not for the good reasons. It's because they understood, just like Assange has been saying all the time, that those who went after him, right after him, they would go after all the rest of the media, including those who sided with the US and the UK in going after. So I think it's just a self-interested position on their part, because it's the same people. It's exactly the same people. It's the same owners, and you know that mainstream media now are owned by billionaires. And I personally, I don't expect anything good from billionaires. Even some of them being weapons manufacturers, like in France. In France, they have at least one very large TV station, which is owned by a weapons manufacturer. So this is the state of things, really, of the mainstream media in France.